Hi there, today I'm going to show you how to create this Solidworks animation using Solidworks 2013. It's very similar if you have a newer version or an older version. We're going to look at how you create keys, how you create camera views, and how you make parts disappear in it, like we see when we come to the back here. So hopefully you find it useful. If you have any other questions, feel free to leave it in the comments, and hopefully myself or someone else will be able to answer them. So to start off this animation, what we're going to do is to look at this first mate that we have between our two gears. So we can look at this and we can see we have a gear mate between our spur gear and our worm gear. So this means that when we turn our worm gear, our spur gear also turns. So that's pretty much all we need to get started. So let's go right into our motion study. Now before we start, let's just look at the main options that we have. So on the top bar here, we have a few options to create videos or to add keys. And keys are going to be our main tool that we use. Keys are really important. If you've ever done any other video editing, you'll know that keys are going to be your best friend, and that's the same case with this. We also have this motor option that we can add motion to. We're going to add a motor onto this yellow axle here in just a minute to make it turn around. And we can add springs and contacts and even gravity. On the left menu here, we have this orientation and camera views. And under that, we have these two keys. We have disable playback of view keys and disable view key creation. So I'm going to unselect both of these so that it's going to enable a view key creation and it's going to enable the playback of view keys. So what this means is that right now our camera is looking at whatever we're looking at up here. So at time 0, this is the view that it's looking at. So if we drag our timeline to 5 seconds and we change our view to a right view, you can see our black line was created here between these 2 points. So it goes from our initial view to our right view. So if we go to 8 seconds and we go to a top view, you can see it automatically created another key point here. So this is how you can automatically create points. So if you push play, you can see that the view that we're looking at changes. So this can be handy, but sometimes it's annoying. If you're in the middle of a time and you change your view a little bit, it adds a new key in here automatically. So the way you disable that is you say disable view key creation. And now if we go to like 2 seconds and we change the view a little bit, it doesn't add a key here, which is sometimes nice. If we wanted to add a key here to our separate view, you could just click here and say add a key, and now it's going to add that point in. Okay, you can also click here and say disable playback of view keys. So now it's not gonna look at our orientation view. It's just gonna, well, it's not gonna do any camera views. So let's turn that back on. So that's one way you can create short animations, is through this orientation and camera views. But the real way to do it is to create a camera that you can move around. And I'm gonna show you how you do that. So I'm going to say disable view key creation and disable playback of view keys, because we don't want it to be looking at what we're doing here. So the way to create a camera is to go right click on lights, camera, and scenes and say add a camera. And you can add a camera to wherever you want. You can position it wherever you want. So if I change position, I can change it here, and I can target or focus on whatever area I want, and I can zoom in and out of it by dragging this pink box. So before we add our camera, I exited out of that. What you need to do is to create a nice path that your camera is going to be able to travel around. So the way that I do that is I'm going to add a reference plane between my motor top and bottom. And I'm going to create a nice smooth curve that goes around it. So I'm going to create a sketch, a nice spline, that comes up, looks at the back, comes to the side, and comes to the front again here. Okay, so I'm going to exit out, and you can drag some of these points around if you want to change it. So you can change the path that it's going to travel on. So that looks pretty good. So we'll exit out of that. And now we're going to go to our motion study, and we're going to create a camera again. So we're going to go add camera and target by selection. We want to target somewhere in the middle, and we want to position it on our path that we just created. So let's put it right there. So it's kind of crooked here, so let's change our roll to be 0. We don't want it all crooked, and we'll zoom out a little bit, and that looks pretty nice for a first view. So we'll add that to our camera. Okay, now say if we want our camera to come to the back here. So we can't see our cameras, we can right click and say show cameras. Now we can see it. So let's create a key over here, say at 5 seconds. I create a key, and see it created a key on this camera here. So at 5 seconds I want it to be at the back of the assembly. So I'm going to go position by selection, and I'm going to go to top view here just so I can see what's happening, and I'm going to drag it to the back of the camera, or to the back of the assembly, just like that. And I'm going to say OK. And now you can see that it starts from our initial position and it comes all the way across to the back. So if we wanted it to pause at the beginning to just look at our initial view, we can say, let's look at the camera view. So you right click on camera and say camera view. And we've pushed play. We can watch that animation. Okay, and sometimes if it jumps out of the camera view, make sure that under orientation and camera views, you have this selected, disable playback of view keys. Because if you don't, what it's going to do is you're going to go to camera view here, and you push play. If you have it selected, sometimes it'll exit out of this view and you won't be able to see it. So it's just something to double check if you're having that issue. Okay, so say if we wanted to pause this view for a minute, what we could do is we could go on our key, click on it, and hold down Control and drag it out to 1 second or so. And now what that does is it copies this key so that both at 0 and 1 second have the same view. So this creates kind of a little time delay, just like that. So if we wanted to pause it again at the back here, we could hold Control on this key and drag it across. Oops, I don't think that copied both the keys. We only want to do this one. So just select that key and hold it, and now you can see it delays, it does our camera view, delays, and now we can keep going. So let's go to 11 seconds here. Let's create another key. Let's exit out of the camera view, and if we double click here, we can say position by selection, and we want it to look right. Say we want it to be right over here or so. That's a little too zoomed in. And I want to target a little bit more over here. Okay. And if we want to create another delay, I hold Control and drag it across. So now if we look at our camera view, you can push play. We can see it creates this smooth animation, and it pauses. It goes around again, and it will pause. So these keys are really useful for our camera view. What we can also do is we can hide different objects of it if we wanted to have a clearer picture of what's going around. So say if we get to the back here and we want to see what's going on, if we wanted to remove some of this assembly, what we could do is we could add a few more keys inside of here. So say if we wanted to hide this housing, we could add a key, I always add keys in sets of 3 or 4 just because it makes life a lot simpler to add more than not enough. So I'm going to add 4 keys here. So at this key, I want it to hide the housing assembly. So if I drag my timeline on and I say hide, it's going to hide it from between 5 seconds to 5.5 seconds. So let's just zoom in here. Okay, so let me just try that again one more time. It's always a little bit tricky working with these keys, but once you kind of get the hang of it, it's not so bad. Okay, so let's create another key here on our housing. And at this point, I want to hide it. Okay, so it was hidden. So from 0 to 4 seconds, it was visible. From 4 to 5 seconds, it's slowly transitioning to hiding it. And then from 5 seconds to 7 seconds, it's going back to visible. So between this 5 and 6, we want it to pause there for a minute. So the way we do that is we click on our key and go Control and drag it out. And now you can see we have this pause effect here where it's going to be hidden. So if we push play, you can see it goes to here, it hides it, and then it goes back. So we can make the duration that it hides it a little bit shorter. And say we want to hide this top cover as well. We can do the exact same thing. So we add our keys. Make sure you have the part that you want to do selected here on the left side. And if you click on the key and you go hide, and drag it across, okay, so let's see what it's doing here to the top cover. So it's hiding it, and now it's making it reappear. So let's delete this key. And we want to copy this key so we have that little pause delay, and there it goes again. So now we can line these up so that it's going to make the housing and the top disappear together. There we go, now we got that time delay. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Now if we wanted to hide the sockets, we could do that again with all of these. So I'm going to select these sockets here, and I'm going to add a few keys. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. So like I said, keys are your best friend when you're working with them here. It's going to save you a lot of headaches to use even more keys than you need. It's not a bad thing. So at this one here, I'm going to say hide. Okay, so let's delete this. We'll select these and hold Control and move it across. Okay, so now our keys disappear. So we'll line all these up so that they're all together with our other parts that are hiding. And same side, or on the other side where they are reappearing, we'll line them all up. Okay, perfect. So you can play around with this however you want to make it perfect, but that's the main idea. So now if we were to play this, we can see that it goes around, it hides our parts appear again, and it rotates around. Okay, now for the last part that we're going to show you how to do is how to add a motor to this as well. So let's exit out of our camera view. let's click the motor, and we're going to add a motor to this axle here and spin it. And we're going to go OK. So it adds our motor right into here. So now if we go to our camera view, let's look at our camera view, and if we push play, it plays it around, and our motor should be spinning here, but we see nothing is spinning. So there's something a little funny going on. And what that is you need to hit this calculate button, and this calculates the motion study for it. So now we can see that our motor is spinning, and it's changing all of our ports that are affected by it with these yellow lines. So it takes a little bit longer to go through it, but then all the motion is saved in it. So now if we hit play again, you can see our motor is spinning in it. Just like that throughout the entire thing. That's looking perfect. So if we wanted to be able to turn our motor on and off, we could do it just like we did with the other keys. We would click on our motor and we would add a key, and we would add another key. So click on our motor, add another key. So say if we wanted to be off up until we disappear until the other components disappear. So we would click on that key and right click on our motor and say off, and you see it turns it off up until the next key. So in this way, the motor is turning, it shuts off. Then it reappears and we're good to go again. So if we calculate that motion study, it re-updates all of our parts. So now we'll see when we come to the back gear, the spur gear stops moving. Okay, so that's pretty good, but what I think I would really like is to be able to have it so it looks at the back, the pieces disappear, and it shows that the motor is running. So the way that you would do that is you could drag these keys wherever you want. So now it's going to not be moving here. It's going to turn on the motor, disappear everything, stop moving, and then start moving again. So if we calculate that, you can see our motor spinning there. It should be. Okay, so we push play. There we go. You can see our motor spinning and it disappears again. Okay, so now we can adjust the timing a little bit to make it so that it looks exactly like we want it to. So say we want to spread this out just a little bit. We want to delay how long it spins for. So I can move these keys over a little bit, and I can move these ones over as well. So this is going to make the whole animation just a little bit longer. So we can see what's going to happen now. Maybe I'll even do this a little more just to exaggerate the effect. So we'll recalculate that. Oops. You should put the timeline at the beginning and recalculate the motion. Okay, and if we hit play, you can see we have our smooth motion now. It makes those components disappear. And there it goes. So let's just change our camera view so that it stops as soon as it starts to disappear, and then it starts moving when everything has appeared again. And we can see that we have these sketch lines in here, and if we want to get rid of those, you just right click on the sketch and you say hide. So now if we push play, you can see that we have our animation with our motor turning. There, and you see in this part here, it kind of made it a little bit wobbly that's because when we targeted it by selection, I think we targeted a point on it that's moving around. So if we go here and we say, where's our target by selection? Let's change this and let's choose a point that's not going to move. So let's choose right here. Okay, and we'll copy this point and bring it over here, and we'll delete this one. So now if we do that, our point is going to stay in the same spot. So it's going to look a little bit better for us. Okay, so I'm just going to change it. I'm going to move it down a little bit. Maybe over here. You kind of want it somewhere in the middle where it's going to look good, but still not be able to move around. Maybe if we even put it right in the center here. Let's see how that works. So I'll copy that point, delete this other one. Okay, so that looks pretty good. It moves a little bit, but it's not too bad. Okay, so we can save our work. And we can view it once again. And you can create other sketch paths that you move on. It doesn't have to be one long line. If you wanted another path above it to get a top view, you would just add a sketch above it and position your camera to be up there. And the camera will just move from whatever 2 points, even if they're not on the same sketch line, it'll just kind of move across in space and then look up there. So to finally do this, we would save our animation as whatever movie file we want to do it as. Sometimes when I've done it, it gets kind of be black and choppy in between. So you can also use a screen recorder and just play your animation and record it off the screen. That works pretty well too. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you have any other questions, feel free to leave a comment below.